welcome to another studio vlog. My name is Sin. I'm an artist and creator trying to start a small stationery business. People have been saying that 2026 is going to be the year for artists. Whether or not I believe in that, well, any bit of motivation is better than nothing, right? This vlog covers weeks 2 and 3 of my routine reset, but most of the footage is actually from the second week. And it's all going to be voiceovers because I've been so physically exhausted due to my brain's absolute lack of chill. I also haven't been able to sleep well lately. My brain has been coming up with so many ideas and scenarios and troubleshooting issues that I didn't even know had to be dealt with. I think it's because of how well the first routine reset week went, and maybe the coffee that I shouldn't have been drinking. All of the footage that I attempted to record with me talking in front of the camera, well, let's just say that I was mostly spaced out and incomprehensible for most of it. So I just gave up and focused more on the recording process. Of course, I did forget to record an entire day of productive printing and painting because I printed out over 260 sheets of letter set and memo pad paper, and it was just so noisy. I did this earlier in the week so that I can let it sit and off gas and dry and then press and then prevent the paper from curling. This is also the first time I actually monitored how much ink it takes to do these prints, so I can get a better estimate of the ink cost for each of these products. Basically, and I'm gonna round the numbers to make the math a little bit easier. For 250 sheets of full colored printing on thin paper with best quality setting, it used up about 25% of 3 of the ink tanks: the cyan, the yellow, and the gray. My printer comes with 6 total ink tanks. That includes magenta, black, and then a photo black. With my basic and probably incorrect math skills, I can expect to print at least 1,000 pages before I need to refill any of the inks. One ink bottle fills the tank fully with about a third left over, so realistically closer to 1,300 colored pages for a single ink bottle. Epson claims that it can print up to 7,500 colored sheets, but I think they're calculating based on the total volume of ink of all 6 inks. I guess if you multiplied 1,300 by 6, it's around 7,800, and that's pretty close to what their claim is. For me, I just want to know when I need to refill one of the inks because many of my designs are heavy on a single color. I've been getting questions about what paper I use for my memo pads ever since I started posting about it. I've noticed that it's something most tutorials don't really tell you about, but just like sticker paper, it's something you have to go out and try the different varieties to see what you like. Your choice of printer also affects what paper you use. A good place to start is actually learning about paper weights. The brightness number doesn't really matter to me because each paper brand has theirs made just slightly different. I also find the brightness scale to be the least accurate, especially when some papers are more cream while others are more gray, and that kind of affects how bright the paper actually looks. A slight tinge to a warm white may look brighter than one with a cooler white. I've also been one to share knowledge just as I have for the sticker paper in the past, so here's what I've been using. This Epson's Bright White Pro paper is 24 pounds bond or 60 pounds text. It has a slightly warm tone. And this Advantage Premium White, also 24-pound bond or 60-pound text, has a slightly cooler tone. And this Office Depot Premium and 28-pound bond or 70-pound text has a more neutral tone compared to the other two. I may switch to just 28-pound or the 105 GSM paper in the future for all of my memo pads, but the Office Depot paper is kind of expensive in my area for some reason. I also can't seem to buy it online anymore. I'm not sure if they blocked my address. The 24-pound paper is a bit lightweight for full color printing, so you'll have to deal with the paper possibly curling. I hadn't realized how bad it could get, but I guess I should have expected it because when I printed reference photos on 20-pound printer paper, the paper curled massively. I actually looked up on how to prevent this, and one suggestion was to run a humidifier while the ink dries. That one was an eye-opener and it made so much sense to me. You're putting a ton of ink, which is humidity, on one side of the paper. So to even it out, do the same on the opposite side. It's kind of a similar practice with priming watercolor paper to me. If you get loose sheets, to prevent it from buckling while painting, you have to wet the entire paper first, front and back. The paper will then expand a tiny bit. It's not really visible to the eye, but then you tape it down, and then when it dries, it's essentially being stretched because the paper tries to shrink back to its original size. And this allows the paper to stay flat. Another test I did was to take out one of my super curled reference photo printed on regular 20-pound printer paper and hold it over the humidifier with the backside facing the steam. I gently curled it the opposite direction to help it go through the uncurling process, and then left it backside up on a table for a few hours. And look how flat it is compared to before. So I did this with my memo pad printouts. Every so often, I'll give the paper like a flip through on all sides and do it over the humidifier, and then let it sit facing down. The humidifier is set to low, so it's not introducing too much moisture. In total, I think I left the humidifier running for about like 5 hours before letting it just sit overnight. The next day, I noticed that like the 28-pound paper had also a bit of curl too. It's not too bad, but it was kind of noticeable. And these were the ones that had like a heavy dark color printed on it. So I added those to the stack of papers, placed some weights to help flatten it more, and then left it for another 24 hours. Overall, it massively helped, but I'm not sure it's quite worth this much added work and downtime just to save some money on the paper itself. When you're starting a small business, every bit of cost feels important. From a $12 ream of 800 sheets to $30 ream of 500 sheets. It might seem like a small cost when the finished product itself is priced almost that much, but you have to remember that there are more costs being factored into each product, including like the fees being taken out from each transaction, the other tools that I need to purchase to make these products in the first place, plus all the time and energy I'm putting into creating the artwork, printing it all, cutting them, and none of that time and energy is actually being factored into the cost. If it were, I'd be making no money and it will be absolutely unaffordable for you. Also, it's not guaranteed that the product itself will sell. If it doesn't, then I've invested hundreds of dollars from paper to tools for a learning experience in DIY and what not to make. On an unrelated note, Costco didn't have my 24 pack of eggs, so I bought the 5 dozen. Is that a lot of eggs? Yes. But I've actually been eating a lot of eggs recently. It's a great source of protein, it makes an easy, healthy snack, and honestly, I just love eggs. They also keep very well. I make eggs in so many different forms, like sunny side, fried, hard boiled, soft boiled, steamed, scrambled, omelets, poached, and you can add it to so many different stir-fry dishes. So from Tuesday's painting session, here's what I created. Lots of clouds. I realized my printer didn't use any magenta, so I also made a magenta piece. I know, my inspirations are so profound. But I didn't like the bottom portion of this piece, and I've kind of been painting it over multiple times. I still don't really like it, it kind of feels too blank, and I'm not sure what to do with it yet, but I'm gonna kind of scan it in as is before I mess with it more. This brownish blue cloud piece was done with a reference photo. It started out absolutely disgusting because orange and blue makes brown, but I somehow ended up with this like really beautiful and almost Renaissance-esque, which then transitioned to painting clouds using these colors. And that's gonna become a sticker sheet. After that, I randomly decided to paint red chili peppers. I don't know how I went from clouds to peppers, but I guess I was thinking about dinner and my partner loves peppers and I've been meaning to make something with peppers. Did you know that I actually considered branding my business Dusty Peppers? But I didn't want to end up only creating pepper arts. Also, yes, I somehow always end up with some negative connotation in my branding name. Monotonous isn't exactly a welcoming word, but I'm kind of just rolling with it. For Wednesday, I didn't manage to do much besides write a new post on Patreon, do some grocery shopping, and complete a phone interview. I didn't sleep the night before, not because I chose to, but my body actually just wouldn't rest. I decided on this day to just not record in person conversations and write a voiceover instead. I sounded terrible, I looked terrible, I couldn't put together the right words. I kept thinking it was Thursday when it was actually Wednesday. If you watched my vlog from last week, you'll know that I did the exact same thing that week. No idea why my brain is having an absolute day off, but I'm pretty sure I rambled way too much for the phone interview and lost my train of thought multiple times. But I did manage to get a full 9 hours sleep after that. Anyways, I've been wanting to paint green chili peppers after doing those red ones, so that's what I did. It's really just blobbing green paint in different longish shapes. Not much to really describe there. I used a darker green for the shadows and then a lighter green for the highlights. And I kept the style consistent with the red peppers so they can be like a set. And then I added the stem, which is just more shades of green, because the stems are usually green for green chili peppers. I also added a bit of brown to the green for the stems just to kind of make it stand out a little bit more. Now that I think about it, it would be kind of fun to do like a chili pepper letter set or like a notepad maybe. So I've been struggling with these envelope designs for the letter set. Originally, I wanted solid color envelopes that matched the design, but it was super hard to find well-matching envelopes. I considered making my own envelopes, but the production of that was way too heavy. It would be better to custom order them, but that's extremely expensive, and I don't want to end up with a bunch of envelopes left over. So I got a box of white envelopes. I tried to do like a full bleed print on the front, but my printer wouldn't let me do a full bleed. And it actually ended up looking really weird because I just took the design and placed it on an envelope. It felt like I was overusing the same element too many times. I thought about just printing my logo on the backside, but you're also getting a sticker to seal the envelope, and that kind of made it like one too many elements on a single side. My partner suggested I create some like small little art for the front and then offset it to the side. This was honestly like a really good idea. So I did some sketching and quickly decided to like add a border for where the address or the receiver's name would go, just because a little artwork floating on the side seemed kind of odd. Something I learned from working at a paper and stationery store is that the post office does not like it when the bottom of the envelope has too much stuff going on. Their automated scan machine prints a barcode on the bottom, so this section always needs to be clear of graphics or anything dark. So from there, I grabbed my hot press paper because it's smooth and will scan without any texture, which makes the digital cleanup a lot easier. I'm creating a template just for reference. I need to make sure that the ratio is all correct. And then after this, I can actually fit 4 designs on a single page. I don't need to, waste more expensive watercolor paper. One of the main reasons I didn't want to create more elements is just the fact that I have no idea how to paint these daffodils. It was like pure fudging when I first painted all this, so I'm kind of just struggling through painting this one again. I ended up grabbing a fresh sheet of paper just to practice painting them before I realized I was actually painting daffodils wrong, because instead of actually getting up close to the original painting or looking at the reference photos again, I decided to just freehand from memory. Obviously, I remember the flower all wrong, so I stopped and just went to sleep, which also didn't work out very well because I haven't been able to sleep these days. Just to let you all know what happened after this, because I'm actually recording this voiceover on the 3rd week. I didn't like any of the designs that I created for these envelopes, so I scrapped the entire thing. The envelopes are just going to be plain white. You'll get the pleasure of customizing them yourself. Maybe in the future I'll consider creating like custom printed envelopes, but for now I kind of just want to keep it on the simple side. On Friday, I finally decided it's time to cut all the notepads and letter papers. I ended up reprinting the new notepad designs because I realized the logo sizes were all over the place. Some were too large and some weren't centered. I did like how the larger logo was more legible, but then I thought, what if you guys don't want such a large logo on a notepad? So I mocked a version where the logo was almost invisible with the design, but then it became kind of like too hard to read. I also then realized that I didn't want so many different versions of my branding. My logo variation is just literally changing the color to match the art so that it'll blend in a lot better. So anyways, here's my guillotine. I love it. It cuts so many sheets of paper so smoothly, at least as long as you use it correctly. When I'm cutting notepads, I always include a sheet of scrap paper, which you'll realize why later on. And I always only cut a set of 50 at a time because I've noticed that each set prints out slightly different in terms of like where it's aligned on the paper. So I stopped trying to figure that out and just made it easier on myself. I've also decided to only cut the top and then glue them and then cut the rest of the edges. That way I have extra margin on all the edges so that I can make that final clean cut. This week has been kind of hard. I don't know why, but I've made so many mistakes with these notepads. I decided to record footage on my phone for like the short content and stuff. And at one point, I forgot to roll down the presser bar. So the cut was like a disaster and I tried to fix it, but then I had to cut way more than I wanted to. So all of those just immediately became like B grade notepads. And then I realized I forgot to include the backing board. My gosh. My production has this like very specific set of steps that I've been refining each time I do this. First is to add the scrap paper. Well, first print out all 50 pages, then add the scrap paper. Then add the backing board. You cut the tops of the top two and then the bottom two notepads. And then you glue the tops. And then you cut the left, bottom, and right edges. It's actually simplified from when I first started doing this, and it gives me a very professional look to the notepads without having to have a really large margin for the cuts. But dang, this week I kept messing up. Maybe it's because I was also trying to film content, and I did give up at one point, kind of sort of. The last thing I messed up on was the gluing. I spent extra time trying to align everything that I hadn't noticed that one of the backing boards shifted, and that showed up immediately when I started gluing. I thought about trying to fix it, but I also didn't want to risk all the others, so I just left it and thought about how I could fix it later. The spoilers is that I did actually fix it, so everything is all good. Maybe this is life telling me that I should just use 28-pound paper instead of the 24-pound paper, because I noticed there was a slight curl on the edge, and that kind of made me fed up, I spent all those extra days with the humidifier trying to make sure the papers don't curl as much, and yet here we are on the third, fourth day, and they're still kind of curling. I have these two C-clamps from another project years ago, so I use them to get a really strong press. And this setup just happens to give me a great angle to apply the glue. In terms of the glue, I actually just use the legit stuff. It's called pad compound, and honestly, I didn't even know this was a thing until it randomly showed up on my feed. You can use the PVA glue and a bookbinding glue, but it dries kind of sticky. Some people will then add additional layer of Mod Podge on top, so it's not so sticky. You can also apparently use white glue, the stuff that you can use in grade school that's super cheap. I find it a little bit harder to peel the pages using a PVA or white glue versus the pad compound. And because I was curious with the pad compound, I got it. It applies really thin and it dries really quick. As long as you get good coverage, you don't need to make so many thick coats. I generally do about 2 to 3 thin layers and then let it sit for hours because, usually I forget about it. And in between coats, I was cutting the wrap bands for the letter set. I tried to record some of the process, but it got repetitive and then I dropped my phone and I was just kind of done with everything at this point. I did also cut all of the letter set papers and a chipboard to go with it. And after that, I was just mentally and physically exhausted and I just stopped. There was more things I needed to do, like, print the letter set stickers, scan all the artworks, test print all the envelope designs, and package the letter sets, but I didn't want to make more mistakes than I've already done. So I just closed up shop and then watched some TV. I finally took the time to finish watching Daredevil Born Again. I was super unhappy with how the storyline at the beginning of the season that I didn't want to keep watching it. But since I'm canceling my Disney Plus account, I kind of just decided to finish watching it. They still ended it on a cliffhanger, which pissed me off. And then I saw that they're making another season in March, which also pissed me off because I canceled my subscription, which ends this month. On Saturday, I tasked myself to do some business operation stuff. I actually did some of the production things that I actually wanted to get done on Friday. I cut the notepads from the stack and actually saw just how abysmal my stacking job went the other day. Truly one of the worst results I've had. I didn't bother trying to do the trimming because I woke up late in the day and I was just tired. Didn't want to make any miscuts again. So I moved on and scanned artworks, did some editing, worked on making sticker sheets from the chili peppers. I had a thought to make a tutorial on how I turn traditionally painted artworks into a digital sticker sheet, but I was honestly just too tired to even try. And because of how tired I was, I actually just migrated with my laptop to bed and finished working there. So I didn't even bother to film. I don't know why I was suddenly so tired this week. I started Monday and Tuesday pretty well, and then went absolutely downhill. Part of me thinks it might be my period, TMI, or that one cup of coffee, or maybe it's the combination of both. I stopped drinking coffee last year and switched to matcha, but then matcha got expensive and the quality was kind of meh, so I stopped drinking matcha. And now I don't really have this morning routine to make a drink besides water or tea. And maybe that lack of a morning pick-me-up also affected me. Who knows? I just hope the next week goes better. I'd like to launch these new products in February and I've got 2 weeks left to finish the production, continue marketing, photographing, creating listings, and descriptions. And I also want to list all the B-grade stuff too, which will require, their own packaging. I also want to create thank you card designs. I've got one left from my last year and I'm kind of ready for a new one. This time double-sided so you get a full artwork on one side to keep. And I might also consider, making a bookmark. I just don't want to make business cards because I feel like they're just immediate trash for online orders. I mentioned at the beginning of this vlog that this is a routine reset period. It's a to-do list tracker that I started on my Notion to make sure I do specific tasks that benefits my art, my business, and my personal health needs. For the second week, I made a few small changes. First, I added a notes row just for me to note down what exactly I did and how I felt that day. On Monday, I removed sketchbooking because I realized just how long it takes to edit these vlogs and I have no mental capacity to sketch afterwards. So I removed it and replaced it with photography. That's taking product photos or just aesthetic photos around the studio, and that generally doesn't take up much time. Those are actually the only changes I made that week. I did manage to do most of the tasks every day with the exception of exercising. I was watching another artist vlog and she mentioned that she will not call a task exercising or a workout because that just makes her not want to do it. So I think I need something similar to that because I just do not want to exercise beyond going on my mile walks. On the third week, I completed very little of what I actually listed. I did try changing a workout task to name it Fitbit Check because I have a friend who we share our Fitbit metrics with each other. Sometimes it's to boast of our achievement for meeting a specific metric, and sometimes it's to cry over a lack of achievement. So I thought this would help, but it really only worked for the first 2 days. Part of the reason why this third week was so weak was actually due to a job interview I had to prep for, and that took up more time than I thought. Plus, my brain likes to come up with so many different contingencies and rerun this conversation so many times that it mentally bogs down my brain processor for literally anything else. I focus mostly on production work for the upcoming shop update in February. Happy to say that I actually am on schedule even with like a massive drop in productivity and losing an entire day for the on-site interview. Although I also dropped the ball on marketing too. I recorded a whole bunch of footage, but because I was trying to make sure I get enough footage, I messed up on a lot of the cuts and the gluing. So there's kind of like a bitterness in me against like the whole marketing aspect and having to look back on these videos of me messing up. Well, the vlog ends here. This was originally supposed to be only week 2 routine reset vlog, but now it includes week 3. I really wanted to curl up and do nothing again. It's kind of been a struggle getting this far, and I am so out of breath recording the voiceover for this vlog. If you made it this far, I congratulate you. But I'm also wondering, like, what have you been doing this entire vlog? Please let me know in the comments. My shop update will be on February 1st, but I most likely will publish all the updates the day before, so January 31st.